Last week, Elon Musk offered to buy Twitter, so that got me thinking about what are the possible outcomes of him buying or not buying Twitter. So we're going to make a flowchart to show what is the possible set of future outcomes. So to start off with, what we already have is Musk buys 9% of Twitter, then offers to buy 100%. Twitter rejects the offer. Musk said some words about the SEC, which I won't say here. And then Twitter took a poison pill, which basically means that they made it so it is not economical for somebody to amass more shares to make it difficult for Elon Musk to do so. So after this, what could happen? This is where we are today, right? So Musk could increase his bid. He could remove his bid. He could increase his stake in Twitter, past 9%. What else could happen? Some tech companies could also bid. So let's say, Google, Disney, other folks. What else here? A PE fund could add a bid. But let's start off by looking at what would happen if he increases his bid. So from there, basically two things could happen. Twitter could accept the bid, or Twitter could reject the bid. Start with the accept bid because it's a little bit more entertaining. So Musk basically needs to come up with the money at this point. So he could do that by selling Tesla shares. He could do it by partnering with, let's say, a private equity firm, something like that, or he could borrow against his Tesla shares, get the money that way. So either way, if he does any of those things, he'll end up buying Twitter. If he does this, if he sells Tesla, then Tesla stock is going to drop, right? Because he's going to be divesting from Tesla. But either way, so if we have Musk buying Twitter, then Twitter is then taken private off the public stock market. And then a few things can happen from there. So Musk could fire the CEO, current CEO. Then we have to think about the impact on the existing shares. So for example, if you are a Twitter shareholder today, your shares would just be converted to cash. You don't have a say in the matter. If the board sells the company, your shares in your brokerage fund are just going to convert to cash. Another thing, they'll have to have less than, I think it's 500 shareholders to go private. So they'll have to figure out how to do that and who gets to stay along for the ride, basically. This also is a change of control, meaning there's a change in control of the company, and depending on the Twitter RSUs and shares, how the contracts are written, various things can happen. The RSUs, the employee RSUs, can get accelerated. That's happened sometimes. So the employees basically will just have all their RSUs that typically vest over many years. They'll accelerate and be given to them today as cash. The RSUs could be canceled. I don't know how common that is, and they'll basically give new RSUs to employees either way. Another interesting thing here is that short sellers basically have to cover. Meaning, if somebody's bet against the stock of Twitter, they'll have to basically go into the market and buy shares because they have to get them back to the person they borrowed them from. So if you are a short seller and the company's bought at this price, then you basically lose the money that you bet, against the company. Let's back to Twitter taken private. So from here, a few things can happen. Obviously, Musk has promised a edit button, right? That's kind of like his wall. He's like, talking about that. Everybody wants the edit button. He's also talked about eliminating bots, which seems really difficult. I don't really see exactly how you would do that, but he's claimed it. what's interesting there is that some fake accounts or hyped accounts get kind of exposed. The ones that have a lot of bot followers. He's talked about having an open algo, for the feed, basically, which could be interesting. Some employees could quit, which will probably happen. People who don't want to work for Musk. Others will join, people that might want to work for Musk, but yeah, either way, there's going to be a lot of turnover, most likely. Okay, so let's back up even further here. So we've kind of talked about if things essentially go well for Musk, he controls Twitter. Oh, actually, one thing I didn't talk about is Twitter's relationship with other Musk companies. So let's say Starlink, for example. So Starlink is a constellation of satellites. That's an ISP, basically, that Musk owns. It's a way for people in rural areas to get satellite internet. And what's interesting about this is if you would think about what kind of service would best run over Starlink, because Starlink is basically internet from satellites in low Earth orbit, it has a higher latency and lower bandwidth. Basically, it's slower than normal fiber in the ground. So what's interesting is that Twitter is a mostly text and small amount of text social network, as compared to, let's say, Facebook. People are posting tons of videos and images, or Instagram. So I think something could be super interesting there. I don't know what, but it is kind of just interesting, the fact that Musk's ISP is well suited for transmitting tweets, as opposed to something else. And of course, this could get the SEC involved, if he does something crazy. But let's go back here to Twitter possibly rejecting this bid, which is more likely. So from here, Musk could increase the bid. But let's say they reject it anyways. So from here, he can go into a hostile takeover. I don't know exactly what that would entail, but basically he could just keep going and try to keep buying. He could also start a competitor, which seems likely enough, given that he can run a tech company. He could do this on his own. So let's go down that avenue a little bit. So if he starts a competitor, he'll probably leave Twitter. He has a large Twitter account. I don't know why he would stay on Twitter. He'd probably sell his 9% stake, which would mean that Twitter stock would drop, back down to where it was before, most likely. Now, let's say that this competitor fails, that he started. Would Musk rejoin Twitter? Seems kind of like a weak move, kind of seems like an all or nothing kind of thing. Wouldn't want to kind of come back to Twitter with his tail between his legs. So maybe he won't do this and leave Twitter. Maybe he'll just kind of suspend his account, something like that. Of course, Twitter could lock him out or suspend his account, but that wouldn't probably be seen very well. Musk could buy a traditional media company if he wants to be in media, even though that's not what he said he wants to do. He says he wants to do this for free speech. What also is interesting is that he'll probably bring influencers. So it'd be interesting to see who he tries to get from Twitter immediately. And I'm sure he'll pull some like marketing antics like he always does. Maybe again flirting with the SEC. Another option here is, instead of starting a competitor, he could start an open protocol, which people have talked about. Jack Dorsey's talked about that, and I think this is the most interesting outcome, where he could try to basically, like email is an open protocol, it doesn't require a centralized service. He could start a open social media protocol. Again, how likely is that, based on what he actually has said he wants to do, and how likely it is for people, the average person, to adopt it? Seems more likely that he would go with a centralized service, at least for now. If you enjoyed this and want to make your own flowcharts, go to nodn.com.